guys, in this video I want to talk to you real briefly about setting Bome up. Included in the OTR2 folder there is an extras folder. Inside of that you have 2 Bome templates. So once you have installed Bome, and there is a free trial available so you can give this a test run, if you load up the basic project, you'll be looking at something that looks like what is on your screen right now. What we have in this particular project is a set of key switch triggers and CC triggers that will help translate keystrokes and CC motions to work within OTR, more specifically for Vienna Ensemble Pro. So if you use Vienna Ensemble Pro and you use disabled templates, this is going to be for you. I think you'll probably like this a lot. Basically, the way we have this set up, and you'll need to set this up based on your current setup, is that any event coming from my CC controller. So personally I have a Platform M Plus by Icon, and I have an X-Touch Mini by Behringer. The Behringer device is basically 8 knobs, 16 buttons, and 1 fader. And then the Platform M I use as a traditional fader bank and knob controller. So there are actually 9 faders on it. So in the basic section here, in the key switches, in the CC triggers, what we have this set up to do is to make sure that based on what you are actually invoking, based on the key switch shortcut or the motion with the CC controller, it's going to trigger CC 118. Now, why I picked 118, we'll get into that in just a minute. But if you are familiar with Vienna Ensemble Pro, you should know that there are ways to disable your instance. In this particular case, I have set up Vienna Ensemble Pro to accept CC 118. Now, in another video, I'm going to walk through the entire setup. This video is specific to Bome, so I'm not going to go too far into that. But within Vienna Ensemble Pro, just know that it receives CC 118 to disable the instance. You can make that whatever you want. In this particular case, we're using CC 118. So inside of the project, the first thing you're going to want to do is go to your device, MIDI devices, and it's by clicking this icon. Like I said, I have Bome set up to collect the signals from those devices, not my keyboard controller, but just the Platform M and the Behringer devices. You'll notice that if you look in this section, the default MIDI ports, that's the Platform M Plus, it's checked, and the X-Touch Mini. And then I'm sending them out to the Bome MIDI translator port. And then if you look down at the MIDI router, we'll scroll over here, trying to get it centered up on the screen. You'll see that I have the X-Touch Mini and the Platform M mapped to the Bome MIDI translator virtual out. So you'll need to make sure you do this with your particular devices. The reason that I have these devices mapped is because I want certain things performed on those 2 devices to be received by Bome, and then for Bome to either choose to continue to pass that signal on to my DAW or to do something with the signal it receives and not send the signal to the DAW. So that's the gist of it. Now, what's important is that setting it up, once you get this set up, you also in Reaper need to go into your preferences, and you need to navigate to MIDI devices and make sure that those 2 devices are also disabled. So you'll see that I've got my X-Touch Mini disabled and I have my Platform M disabled. But the signal from those are still being received by Reaper because it's sending through, let me find it here. It's sending through the Bome input, or it's the output from Bome to the input of Reaper. So you need to make sure that that is enabled. So that's what you need to do. Your controllers into Bome. There's 1. Number 2 is right there. I guess I didn't have to scroll down. So those 2 are disabled. This one is enabled. And in Bome, those 2 are enabled here. So that's the general layout of getting it set up. Okay, so real quickly, what's going on inside of the Bome project? You'll notice that you have two of these that have checkboxes. These other guys do not have checkboxes. Leave this as is. What's going to happen is if you receive certain key switches, key switch triggers, or I guess you could say shortcuts on your keyboard, it's going to invoke sending CC118, either a value of 1 or 127 into your DAW. And what that will do is, coupled with the key switch, it will cause Vienna Ensemble Pro to disable itself or reactivate an instance. So that is going on with the additional activate, disabled, and freeze functions within OTR. If you do not have Bome as a layer, because Vienna Ensemble Pro stands alone, it will not know. There is just no way for it to receive a signal to know that it needs to unload the instance from RAM, if that is your intention. If you, for example, disabled a track in Reaper that has Vienna Ensemble Pro on it, it will disable the plugin. It will not disable the actual instance on the Vienna Ensemble server. And that's what we're trying to get around. We're trying to say, okay, we want the options for OTR to just disable plugins like it normally would, but we want to build these advanced functions that allow us to disable the instance in the same way we would expect to do it if it were hosted inside of Reaper, which it's not, because it's hosted inside of its own piece of software. So if you use Vienna Ensemble Pro, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you are listening to this and are just trying to learn about Vienna Ensemble Pro, I'm going to have other videos that discuss how to use it within OTR, and it really is an amazing tool. I highly recommend it. I think there are benefits to it, even if you don't have a full Vienna Ensemble Pro setup. If you just have some small uses for it, it still makes a lot of sense. So definitely something to look at. But anyway, I guess just real quick, going back to the Bome template, if you use the basic template, like I said, you get the key switch and CC triggers. If you open up the advanced templates, which mine's named a little bit differently. For me, I have an additional section in here that basically modifies my platform M. So my platform M has 8 knobs across the top of the faders as well. And what I wanted to do is, if I push the knob in to activate a button, I wanted to be able to twist the knob and have it change CCs. So for example, if the first knob is like CC 17, if I push it in, I may want to activate, say, CC 28 or something like that. There isn't a way to do that with the Icon software. So what I did was I set up each of the Icon Platform M knobs to have a specific CC. And then if you push them in, which that is definable within the Icon software, they all trigger CC 80. If CC 80 is pressed, that's what it's saying. If CC 80 is pressed, what it's going to do is it's going to then activate this preset for 80, which is, let me zoom out, this section. And in this section, we say, okay, if we are twisting knob 1 and it receives 13, we're going to send it out on 3. If the knob is normally 14, but 80 is pushed, we're going to send it out to 9, and so on. So like 8, which is the last knob, if CC 20, which is assigned to that knob 8, is being twisted, but it's being pushed down, which means CC 80 is being triggered, then we're going to push it out to CC 31. So it's basically doubling up the ability to have more CC control on my Icon Platform M. So that is really the main thing that is in the advanced version versus the basic. And then there is also a set of key switch triggers that are not included in the basic. All of these guys, from the start to the end of the stem group. Basically, what's happening here is I have on my Behringer X Touch Mini, there are 16 buttons that I can push. And actually, it has a layer, so it gives me 32 buttons. I can toggle on the top layer or the second layer, A or B, on the Behringer device. And I have assigned a note to each of those devices or each of those buttons. So, note C1 will send basically a keystroke shortcut, which has already been assigned to a view state for tracks. And so these were all included in the 2.1 update. I went ahead and assigned keyboard shortcuts to some visibility toggles. It helps me turn on and off groups of tracks and things like that really quickly. And instead of me having to hit the key switches, I mean, there are 32 different VICs. There are 8 groups that I can toggle. Instead of having to try to remember all the shortcuts to that, I have them mapped to buttons on my X Touch Mini, which makes it super easy. Now, the one thing that it does require is that those buttons trigger a note. And so this is why we don't have the Behringer device, for example, going straight to the DAW. We want Bome to catch that note. We want it to say, oh, okay, you're playing a note, an actual physical note on a keyboard that would normally trigger a sound. But we want to catch it and then not send that to your DAW. We want to instead tell the DAW to do something else. We want to tell it to run a script. So that's why we have specifically routed the devices in through Bome and turned them off inside of Reaper OTR. So anyway, this is Bome in a nutshell. Hopefully it all made a lot of sense. The advanced just gives you some additional features of what I use. Modify it to your heart's content. CC118 is pretty standard in the way that I've mapped everything in OTR. So I would say the path of least resistance is to set your instances up with CC118. If you are hardcore and have your Vienna Ensemble Pro instances to disable on a different CC, then just know you're going to need to modify the Bome template and a few other odds and ends in the OTR template. But they should all be pretty self-explanatory when I go through the Vienna Ensemble Pro walkthrough. So this is Bome. Thanks for watching.